Hi, Music 103A students. Hope you're doing well. Today's lesson is about second inversion triads, and we're going to look at some voice leading for three types of them today, and then we'll look at some Roman numeral analysis that uses these 6/4 chords as well. So remember, second inversion triads, 6/4 chords, they're going to have the fifth in the bass, and when you voice lead, you want to make sure that you double the fifth, which is the base of the chord. Now we're going to explore the voice leading for three of them today. There are four types of 6/4 chords that we're going to learn and use in our own music. They are called passing, pedal, cadential, and arpeggiated. Now please do make sure that you read through and study the notes that I put in Canvas. You'll see that I gave you many examples and also some recordings for a lot of the examples in the textbook. So please make sure you read through that before you view this video with the voice leading. I think it's important to get a little bit of an idea of what those four look like from the examples from the textbook before we look at the voice leading. All right, we're going to look at the voice leading for three of these 6/4 chords. There really is no voice leading with the arpeggiated 6/4 because the bass just changes and the upper parts really just stay in the same chord. We're going to look at the voice leading for the pedal 6/4, the passing 6/4, and the cadential 6/4. And you'll see that there is really a typical way to voice lead each one of those chords. You'll see that various techniques will result if you lead them correctly, and they have a very characteristic look to them. Well, we're going to start here in the textbook, page 145, part C. So this is in your textbook, page 145, part C, and this is actually the second example from the textbook in part C. First thing to do here is to realize the figures. By the way, you won't be required to realize figured bass for your homeworks or your exams this semester. We'll go ahead and do that more formally next semester, but I will show you how to realize the figures with Roman numerals a little bit here, as long as we're looking at it. When there's no symbol, that means root position triad. Okay, so this is going to be D, F sharp, A, which is 1. No symbol here, that's going to be root position, so it's A, C sharp, E. 6/4 means second inversion, just like it does with a Roman numeral. So 6/4 means this is the fifth of the chord. Now if A is the fifth, the root is D, right? And the chord is D, F sharp, A. So that's going to be 1, 6/4. Now the 5/3 tells me that the 6/4 above the bass here will go back to root position, back to 5/3 above. So it's going back to 5. Now, the reason why there's no 5/3 here is because these are just simply root position, but when the composer changes this to the fifth of the chord, to change it back to the root, because it's the same pitch, you do have to write the 5/3 to say, go back to root position. Now, this chord is a pedal 6/4. Remember that each 6/4 chord has a different looking bass line. The bass line for the pedal 6/4 has the same note on the 6/4 chord, the same note before it, and the same note after it. That's why it's called the pedal 6/4. Pedal 6/4s should be placed in parentheses. Now, when you're looking at the bass line formula for these 6/4 chords, make sure you look on the 6/4, one chord before it and one chord after it. So A, same note after it. Okay, moving on with our Roman numerals. B in the bass, nothing written below it, so that means root position, and that's going to be 6. 6 means first inversion, so this is the third. Now if G is the third, the root is E. So the chord here is going to be EGB, and that's 2. Now keep in mind, you're not going to be able to change the bass. You're going to be writing the notes indicated above the bass. 6/4, again, that means second inversion, so this is the fifth of the chord. And the fifth is A, so the root is D. So the chord is D, F sharp, A. And then again, this is telling me to go from second inversion to root position. And then 1 at the end. Okay, now which type of 6/4 chord do we have here? Well, notice that we have scale degree 5 in the bass for the 6/4, scale degree 5 after it, and a different scale degree before. That's the formula for cadential. So again, the formula for cadential is on the 6/4 chord, scale degree 5 in the bass, also scale degree 5 after it for the 5 chord, but a different note before. Now the pitch before is most often scale degree 4. Scale degree 4 accommodates the 4 harmony, but it also works with 2/6. Both of these chords, 4 and 2/6, go to 5. And remember, in the cadential 6/4, the 1/6/4 and the 5 together should be thought about as functioning like 5. So the 1/6/4 actually decorates the 5 chord. Okay, now we're going to look at the voice leading for this one. And I'm giving you the first voicing. Put the D in the tenor, F sharp in the alto, and A in the soprano. Notice we started with 2 roots, 1/3 and 1/5. Now moving from 1 to 5, we can keep that common tone. We have 2 A's. We need a C sharp and an E. All right, now the characteristic voice leading for the pedal 6/4, you're going to have 2 voices, 2 of the upper parts here. They're going to go up by step, and then they're going to come right back down to where they just left. It's called a neighbor motion. And because of that, some textbooks actually call this a neighboring 6/4 chord. So in a neighbor motion, you go up and then right back down to the same pitch, or down and then right back up to the same pitch. So typically in these chord progressions, what you're going to be doing is up by step into the 6/4 in 2 of the voices. Remember, this is D, F sharp, A. Okay, and then you're gonna come right back down to where you had just left. And remember, that's called a neighbor type motion. Neighbor motion here as well. Okay. Now the other voice part needs to double the bass. Remember that in any 6/4 chord, you should double the bass, which is the 5th of the chord. And so what you're going to do here is just keep that A, and then keep it here in this chord as well. So when you listen to this chord progression, you will hear this neighbor type motion for the pedal 6/4. Okay. You don't have to include the arrows in your analysis, but I included them here just to show you that is happening. All right, well, when you're moving 5 to 6, remember you want to double the 3rd of the 6th chord. Of course, if you remove this A to the B, notice how you'd have a parallel octave with the bass. So to avoid that, you're going to go down here. The leading tone, which is C sharp in the key of D, will resolve to 1 of the 3rds of the chord. And then this voice here, instead of going to the F sharp, which would be a parallel 5th with the bass, we're going to go down to the doubled 3rd. So remember, when you move 5 to 6, double the 3rd of the 6th chord. Okay, in this chord, we want to think about an anchor tone. And the anchor tones in the key of D are D, G, and A. And this chord is spelled E, G, B. You can see the anchor tone is G. Well, we can actually double the G by taking this note up to the G here. We also need an E and a B in the chord. So you can take the E, get the E here, and then put this to the B. Like so. Okay, now again, you want to make sure that you double the bass for this 6/4 chord. But notice if I move this G to the A, I'll have a parallel octave with the bass part. So let's double it here. Now the other 2 notes are D and F sharp. Now the characteristic voice leading for the cadential 6/4 is that if you have it set up properly here to double the bass to fifths, two of the voices will fall down by step into the 5 chord. You just hold on to this tone right here, and two of these notes come right down by step. So very typical characteristic voice leading for the cadential 6/4 is to have two of the upper parts come down by step from the 1/6/4 chord into the 5. Now, of course, which two voices depends on how this chord is voiced. Also keep in mind that having these two A's held onto, there's no problem there. It's not a parallel or anything because it's static motion. All right, then we can finish up. Keeping this A is going to be the most likely scenario as a common tone. And then we can just move this to the F sharp and the D. Two Ds, two roots, 1/3, 1/5. Okay, so in this example, you can see the characteristic voice leading for the pedal 6/4, which is to have this neighbor motion in two of the upper parts. And again, the two parts that involve that type of motion are going to depend on how you voiced this first chord here and how this chord is voiced. But notice how two voices go up by step, and then they come right back down to where they had just left. The other part is just held on to as a common tone. Don't forget to double the bass of a 6/4 chord, which is a fifth. All right, and then the characteristic voice leading for the cadential 6/4 is to have two of the voices fall down by step into the 5 chord. All right, now let's take a listen to this chord progression in D major. Okay, and let's look a little bit at each one of these 6/4 chords. First one, the pedal 6/4. Notice how two voices go up by step, come right back down. That neighbor type motion we were talking about. It sounds like that. And the cadential, two voices down by step into the 5. So two voices down by step into the 5 chord out of the 1/6/4. Really does sound like it's being decorated, doesn't it? Also notice in the 1/6/4 chord, it's placed on the strong beat. So the 5 chord comes on the weaker part, and then the following one comes on the strong beat. So you get strong, weak, strong. Next up, I'm going to show you the characteristic voice leading for the passing 6/4 chord. And this is on page 145 of your textbook, part C, the last example in E minor. Now again, to start off, I'm going to write a Roman numeral analysis based off of these figures that are given to me. These are called figured bass symbols. If there is no number underneath, that means root position triads. So this is just going to be minor 1. 6/4 means second inversion. Second inversion has a fifth in the bass, so if the bass is F sharp, the root is B, right? And the chord is B, D, F sharp according to the key signature. The slash through the 6 tells me to raise the 6th note above the bass. So 6 above F is D. It's going to become a D sharp. Now remember, you expect that D sharp as the leading tone in the key of E minor, right? So that really is just an indication to raise the leading tone when you have the B major chord. When you have the chord on B, make it major. 6 means first inversion. So if G is the bass, E is the root. All right, and this is a passing 6/4. use parentheses. So passing and pedal 6/4 chords should be in parentheses, and the cadential 6/4, which we did earlier, is going to be bracketed with the 5 after it. By the way, the arpeggiated 6/4 also uses a parentheses. Now notice the function of this particular chord here is it prolongs or decorates the tonic chord area. It goes between 1 in root position and 1 in first inversion. So it gives a little sound of the 5 in between, but it really is still functioning like the tonic chord, this whole little part right here. So passing 6/4, you're going to find two things. You're either going to have the bass go up by step into the 6/4 chord and up by another step out of it, or you'll go down by step and then down by step. So it passes through on the way up or the way down. That's the baseline formula for the passing 6/4. All right, the C here, that means root position, right? And C, E, G is 6. 6/4, again, that means that this is the 5th of the chord. So the root is E. It's 1/6/4. Now this 5 in sharp, what the 5 means is the 6th above the bass here is going to go to a 5th above here. An accidental with no number next to it automatically applies to the 3rd above the bass. So you could imagine a 3 next to the sharp there. So this is saying root, second inversion here is going to root position here, and the 3rd above the bass, which is B, the bass is B, the 3rd above B is D sharp. Again, it's an indication to write the leading tone in a minor key. And this is a cadential 6/4, so we use a bracket. Now remember, the cadential 6/4 is going to have scale degree 5 in the bass for the 6/4, scale degree 5 in the bass after it, but a different note before. So scale degree 5, different pitch before it. The baseline formula for the passing, remember, up by step again, or it could go the opposite direction. It could go down by step and down by step again. Now the characteristic voice leading for the passing 6/4 chord involves a voice exchange with the bass. So if the bass is going E, F sharp, G, one of the upper parts will do the opposite of that and go G, F sharp, E. They'll basically swap positions. That's known as a voice exchange. Now, of course, where the voice exchange occurs really depends on the voicing of this chord. If the bass is going to go E, F sharp, G, and another one above is going to go G, F sharp, E, you can see it's actually going to happen in the bass and the alto here. Let's take a look how it works. Remember to double the bass of the 6/4 chord. If I write the E to the F sharp in the tenor, I'll have a parallel octave with the bass. So take this G to the F sharp instead. Okay, there's the bass doubling. I also need a B and a D sharp. Well, I can hold on to the B as a common tone, and then I can write my D sharp in the tenor part. Okay, now moving into here, I want to double an anchor tone if possible. This chord is E, G, B. The anchor tones in the key of E are E, and scale degree 4 is A, scale degree 5 is B, right? Those are the anchor tones. So the first choice in this chord is the E, second choice would be the B. And you can see that the E is very easily doubled by the tenor and the alto. And I can just hold on to the B here. Now, did you notice the voice exchange happen? We didn't really even think about it after we talked about it initially, but look how the bass goes E, F sharp, G, and the alto does the opposite, G, F sharp, E. Usually when you see that in music theory books, they do something like this. And that signifies a voice exchange. Notice how the bass and the alto are basically swapping positions, exchanging positions. It's known as a voice exchange. All right, so when you voice lead the passing 6/4 chord, you should look for that voice exchange between the bass and one of the upper parts. Well, moving from this chord to this chord is a little bit tricky. Let me show you what could happen if you're not paying attention. If you were to move this B to the G, Notice how that would be moving into a fifth with the bass and the leap in the soprano. Remember, that would be a direct or hidden fifth if you move this down to the G, right? So a direct or hidden fifth, remember, is when you have some other interval between the bass and the soprano moving into a fifth when there's a leap in the soprano. And they move in the same direction. To avoid that, let's move up to the C here. Now, of course, if I move this one up to the G, I would have nowhere to move this voice. And I would also have an overlap. So move the alto up to the G and keep the tenor on E. Okay, now it's going to get a little more tricky because 6 does not typically go to 5. Remember, this whole thing is functioning like 5. So this is really actually not on the flowchart of chords as a typical chord progression. If you weren't paying attention, you might write the B here, but notice that's a parallel octave, bass and soprano. So we actually can't do that. You're going to have to write the B here. And that's going to leave us into the E way up here and the G here. Pretty high voicing. If you don't like that high voicing, you can actually go back and maybe start with the B in the tenor instead of the E in the tenor, and that would give you a little bit different voicing at this spot. Okay, now we made a big effort to make sure the B is doubled, which we did. We have one root and one third. Now remember, with the cadential 6/4, the characteristic voice leading for the cadential 6/4 is to have two parts come down by step into the 5. So here, the E will come down by step to the D sharp. Don't forget to mark it in. That's what this is for. The third above the bass here is a sharp. The G will come down by step to the F sharp. And then we'll just keep this B. Okay, so again, the characteristic voice leading for the cadential 6/4, two of these voices in the 6/4 chord will come down by step. We'll hold on to the other one as a common tone. Unless you went to a 5/7, then this one would actually go from a B to an A, and all of them would go down by step into the 5/7. Okay, there is a rule that says leading tone in the upper part must resolve, so let's make sure we take care of that. We can keep this common tone, and then move this one back to the G. Now, again, if you don't like the range that you're using here, the register is a little high, you could go back and start with a B in the tenor, and that might be a little better. This would be your tenor line then, down an octave. Okay, so just a reminder, the main point of this one, by the way, is to learn the characteristic voice leading for the passing 6/4. So look for that voice exchange to occur in one of the upper parts with the bass when you're writing the passing 6/4 chord. All right, let's go ahead and take a listen to this one in E minor. And let's take a listen specifically for that voice exchange that we talked about. The bass goes like this in the beginning, and the alto part goes. That's a voice exchange. In the 4 parts, sounds like this. Okay. And then the cadential 6/4, as long as you have it set up correctly with the correct doubling, two voices come down by step into the 5. Here's the whole thing one more time for you. Well, for a little bit extra practice on your own, please go ahead and do page 145, part B. And this is what page 145, part B looks like. Just the ones for 4 parts. So they ask you to write in the alto and the tenor. Notice I did give you the first voicing for both of them. Also the second chord in this one. So go ahead and complete both of these. Pause the video and complete them. This one is cadential. So remember, you're going to have two voices fall down by step into the 5 chord. And this one is passing, so you should be looking for that voice exchange to occur. Okay, go ahead and pause the video, complete both of these examples, and we'll go over them together. All right, first one in the key of F. It sounds like this. Example of a cadential 6/4. A couple things with the voice leading. Remember that the anchor tone should be doubled in this chord, and the anchor tone in the key of F that was doubled was the B flat, right? In the key of F, the anchor tones are F, B flat, and C. And it made good voice leading. This B flat goes down, this one goes up. So we need the G and the D. Remember to double the bass of the 6/4 chord, 2 Cs, 1 F, 1 A. And then remember 2 of the voices in the cadential 6/4 go down by step into the 5. The other one's kept. So you're really hearing that going down by step into the 5 chord. Also remember the bass line formula for the cadential 6/4 is to have scale degree 5 in the bass for the 6/4 chord, scale degree 5 after it, this time it was displaced by an octave, and then a different tone before the 6/4 chord, often scale degree 4. All right, here's the second one in B minor. Take a listen to it first. All right, and the voice exchange here is the main voice leading characteristic that I wanted you to see. And so the bass is going G, F sharp, E. Notice how the alto goes E, F sharp, G. That's where the voice exchange is between the bass and the alto. Let's take a listen to that. So the bass goes, and the alto goes, and they swap positions. Also, don't forget to mark in your leading tone, since we're in a minor key. In the key of B minor, A sharp is your leading tone. One more time. And of course, eventually you would expect the music to go back to tonic. All right, I'm going to take you through a couple more voice leading examples using these 6/4 chords. This is in your workbook, page 75, part B, number 3. So page 75 in your workbook, part B, number 3. Now you can see this particular 6/4 chord is a pedal 6/4. Notice the bass line. C sharp on the 6/4, C sharp before it, and C sharp after it. So remember to always look at that 3-part formula for the bass line for these 6/4 chords to identify them. On the 6/4 chord, 1 note before it and 1 note after it. So this is a pedal 6/4. Now I'm actually going to start here. And the reason why is because I know for sure that I want 2 roots, 1/3, 1/5, but this one's a little bit more variable. The anchor tone is the F sharp. That's my first choice. The second anchor tone in this chord is C sharp. Well, I'm definitely going to keep this F sharp. So now I have F sharp, A, and C sharp. I could double the F sharp and have a 3rd leap in the tenor, which is fine. Or I could double the C sharp and have stepwise motion. That really is more often what you'll see in a real piece of music. Less leaps, often better in the voice leading. Okay, now remember, coming into this chord, we want to make sure that we double the bass. We also want to double the bass here, which is the root. So here, the root is the bass, and here the 5th is the bass. So we can come down here. Now don't forget, you're in a minor key, so you do need the leading tone for the 5. and the 7 diminished. Okay, now the characteristic voice leading for the pedal 6/4. 2 voices will go up by step, and then they'll come right back down to where they just left. Remember, that's called a neighbor type motion. So here we can see that's already happening in the soprano voice. G sharp, A, G sharp. The alto voice is going to go F sharp, E sharp, F sharp, E sharp. So 2 voices go up by step and then come right back down to where they had just left. That's that neighbor motion that you're looking for in the pedal 6/4. And then it's just simply a matter of keeping that other scale degree 5. So here we have 2 roots, here we have 2 fifths, the bass, and here we have 2 roots. Now remember, you can keep these 2 C sharps. No motion, static motion, there's no parallel. Okay, this is on the same page in the workbook, 75. This is part C, and it's number 3. Part C, number 3. Really quickly, let's go over the Roman numerals. So it's in the key of C minor. Remember that no symbol below means root position, so this is going to be 1. The 6 means first inversion, just like it does with a Roman numeral. And so this is the 3rd, right? Now if B flat's the 3rd, G is the root. So the chord here is G, B flat, D. We haven't really seen this. It doesn't happen too much, but it does occur occasionally. This is a minor 5. Notice the leading tone is not marked in. It truly is a B flat. So it's G, B flat, D that makes a minor 5 chord. A flat in the bass, that's the 3rd of the chord again. So it's F, A flat, and C. That makes a 4 chord. So this is going to, above the A flat, you're going to write F, A flat, C. G in the bass here means, G in the bass and 6/4 means this is the 5th of the chord, right? So if G is the 5th, C is the root. So this chord is going to be C minor above the G. 6 means first inversion. F is the 3rd, so D is the root. D, F, A flat's the chord. Now remember that's diminished in a minor key. And let's go back and make sure that we analyze this chord correctly with the appropriate parentheses or bracket. Now look at the bass line. The bass line is going down by step into the 6/4 chord and then down by step again out of it. That is a passing 6/4. Passing 6/4s are placed in parentheses. You might remember that in the voice leading, we're going to expect to see a voice exchange. So one of the upper parts should go F, G, A flat, while the bass is going A flat, G, F. Okay, the natural here applies to the 3rd above the bass. So whenever you have an accidental, when there's no number next to it, it applies to the 3rd above the bass. So instead of G, B flat, D, here we're going to have G, B natural, D. And that's your leading tone as expected on the 5. And then this is going to be 1. Minor 1. All right, let's take a look at the voice lead on this one now. Before we voice lead, let's take a look at what we want to double. So root position, double the root. Diminished in first inversion, double the bass, which is a 3rd. Second inversion, double the bass, which is a 5th. Any major or minor triad in first inversion, that's where we're thinking about the anchor tones. And the anchor tones in this key are C, F, and G. Scale degrees 1, 4, and 5. So double the root, anchor tone if possible, anchor tone if possible, double the bass, which is a 5th of the chord, double the bass, which is the 3rd of the chord, double the root, double the root. All right, now moving from this chord to this chord, we have a G in common that we can keep. So there's one common tone. Okay, G, B flat, D is the chord. We can definitely move this one up to the D. And notice the G is actually the anchor tone. We can get the anchor tone if we move this E flat up to the G. That's a 3rd away. Or we could double the D, which makes a little bit smoother voice leading. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now the next chord is F, A flat, C. F is my first choice because it's the root of the chord for doubling. C is my second choice. Well, if I write an F here, I could also write an F here. And then I could write the C here. But notice what happens. Do you see the parallel fifth between the alto and the soprano? Two G's, a G and a D rather, moving to an F and a C. 2/5 in a row. Well, in this case, of course, we don't want to write a parallel fifth. What you could do is move this up to the A flat instead. So it's not an anchor tone, but it's way better than writing the parallel fifth. So remember, the voice leading takes precedence over the voicing of that particular chord. So in other words, moving from one chord to the next is more important than the particular voicing and doubling when it comes to the anchor tone decision making. So that really just applies to major and minor and first inversion. Okay, moving into the next chord, remember we want to double the bass. Now be careful, because if you take the A flat to the G, you'll have a parallel octave with the bass part. So let's take the tenor to the G instead. Then we're left with needing a C and an E flat. Okay, now at this point, we do have these 2/3 leaps here. At this point, I'm actually going to recommend that we go back and we start again. Now the reason for that is because I know in the next chord we're going to have to take this G to an A flat. And I just think the tenor is getting to be a little bit too high. So I left this in the video to show you what would happen if you had difficulties kind of in this part. One of the possibilities is to actually start over again. So I'm going to start over again, make some different choices, and see if I can make a better tenor line. This time, I'm starting with the C and the bass and the tenor together, E flat, alto, and G and soprano. Let's see if we have better luck with this. Well, remember that we did want that G as a common tone. And then we doubled the D, if you remember from last time. So we can still do that. Okay. Now, perhaps it might make more sense to move this down to the F. And let's see here. We can move this down to the C. Okay. And then we could double the F. Now notice we were able to do that this time because now we had a fourth between the D and the G and a fourth between the C and the F. Before, it was G to D. So actually one way to get rid of parallels, parallel fifth, is to revoice the chord and write them as fourths. So now we have parallel fourths, which are okay. I was also able to double the anchor tone in this chord, which was the F. Okay, now I think we're going to have a little more success if I move this F up to the G here. Then I can keep the C, and then E flat in the alto. Remember to double the bass here. Okay, D, F, A flat is this chord. We want two Fs. I can write the other F here. We also need a D and an A flat. Now, did the voice exchange occur? Let's check it out. The bass is going A flat, G, F, and the soprano in this case is going F, G, A flat. So the voice exchange actually happened between the bass and the soprano. So remember, passing 6/4, you're typically going to find that voice exchange. Now moving from here to here is a little bit tricky because a lot of times I'll see this when I'm grading papers, just to give you an idea. Now there's actually several errors. First of all, there's parallel octaves between the bass and the alto. Also, I forgot to mark in my leading tone. But if I did mark in my leading tone, notice between the A flat and the B natural, that's an augmented second interval. I want to avoid augmented and diminished intervals. So when you're voice leading from 2 diminished 6 going to 5, you will have contrary motion with the bass. This voice will come down to the B natural. Don't forget to mark it in. You're in a minor key. This natural right here tells you to raise the third above the bass. This tone will come down to the G, and then this one down to the D. So now we have the 2 roots, the 1/3 and the 1/5. Okay, finish it up. If we hold on to the G here, we can go up to the E flat and C and the tenor. Okay. Now, of course, there's going to be more than one solution to this. It really depends on how you voice your first chord. But any way you attempt it, you want to make sure that you have that voice exchange occurring for the passing 6/4. This one was particularly difficult because of the bass line going down by step here, and the parallel first inversion chords. Makes it a little more difficult as well. Let's take a listen to number 3. This is on page 75, part B, number 3. It's an F sharp minor. And here's what our solution sounds like. Listen particularly for the neighbor type motion in the pedal 6/4. Okay, and here's number 3 in C minor. And look and listen for the voice exchange. The bass goes A flat G F, and the soprano goes F G A flat. So here's 4 in first inversion, 1 6 4, and then 2 diminished 6. By the way, notice what that passing 6/4 does. It prolongs or decorates or elongates this predominant chord area. 4 and 2 both precede 5, right? They're both predominant chords. And the passing 1 6 4 in the middle prolongs that functional area of the predominance. This is some Roman numeral analysis practice, and it's in page 144 in your textbook. Page 144 in your textbook, number 2. This is Handel's Suite number 5. It's actually a theme and variations, and this is the theme. It's in the key of E major. Let's take a listen to it first. And we're going to do a little analysis here. This example, of course, does feature some 6/4 chords, so we're going to find them and then identify which type of 6/4 chord we have. Let's go ahead here in the key of E major. Notice we have a G sharp, a B, an E, and another B. So remember to put that in root position. In root position, you'd have E, G sharp, B. Right? And you can see, of course, that's number 1. And the third of the chord is the bass. So 1 6. Right? Next chord, we have A twice, 2 A's, E and C sharp. So, of course, that's A, C sharp, E. That's number 4. It's major. And it's in root position. Notice the roots in the bass. So far we have. Now notice in chord number 3, the E is still sounding. Quarter note here, 8th notes here. So this is still a part of the chord. G sharp, B, E, B. It's just the same chord as number 1 there, right? E major chord with the G sharp in the bass. Chord 4 is the same as chord 2, A, C sharp, E. So in the beginning of this piece, Handel is really simply going back and forth between 1 and 4. There's 4, back to 1, 4, back to 1. He's able to achieve enough variety by changing the bass note of the 1 chord. You can see it goes between first inversion and root position. Here's root position. Here's first inversion. And with some interesting melodic figures as well. Okay, the 5th chord here, in terms of the blanks at least, keep in mind the E is still sounding. So we have the same 1 chord, E, G sharp, and B. And notice that chord 6 is also A, C sharp, and E. Now, remember when a note's in parentheses, that's telling us that it's a non-chord tone. And you should ignore it for the purposes of your analysis. So you can see the chord is really that, and with the D sharp, very dissonant. So the D sharp is actually a non-chord tone, and the C sharp is the chord tone. You can hear that's 4, right? A, C sharp, E. And then don't forget the E is still sounding here. The C sharp is dissonant, and the B is the chord tone. So again, whenever you have a note in parentheses, that's called a non-chord tone, and you should ignore it for the purposes of analysis. So this is E, G sharp, B. That's 1 in first inversion. All right, and blank 8, we have F sharp in the bass and the tenor, D sharp, and B. Now remember to arrange those all in thirds, so you would have B, D sharp, F sharp. And in the key of E, that's going to be 5. It's major. And the bass note is the 5th of the chord, so 6-4. Now, as soon as you find a 6-4 chord, you should always ask yourself which type it is. Okay, is it pedal, passing, arpeggiated, cadential? And place it in a parentheses or a bracket as appropriate. And you can see the bass goes G, F sharp, E. That makes this a passing 6-4. Put in parentheses. And then E, B, E, G sharp is 1 in root position. And notice what that passing 6-4 chord does is prolongs or decorates the 1 chord area. So you have that chord progression right there. 1 in first inversion, 5, 6, 4, and then 1 in root position. Okay, here's blank 10. We have the notes B, F sharp, B, D sharp. Well, we already identified that as 5. This time, though, we're in root position. Notice the B is the bass note. And here we have G sharp and B. And the E actually comes a little bit later to it. But I think you can hear that all this is a part of the same chord. And of course, that's going to be 1 with the 3rd in the bass. So here's your 5, and here's the 1. 5 and 1. Okay, chord 12, let's take a look. We have the notes A, C sharp, F sharp. As always, you want to make sure you put those in the order so they're all a 3rd apart. So in root position, your chord is F sharp, A, and C sharp. In the key of E major, that's number 2. The quality is minor. And then notice the A, the 3rd of the chord, is the bass. Okay, chord 13. G sharp, B, and E. So again, make sure you're putting it in root position to think about what number it is and the quality. So there it is in root position. Of course, that's 1. And you'll see that the 3rd, the G sharp, is the bass. Chord 14 actually is a little more tricky. It has the notes A, C sharp, F sharp, and D sharp. You see how all these notes are part of the chord? So the chord sounds like this. 4 different pitches, right? A, C sharp, F sharp, and D sharp. In root position, you would think of it as D sharp, F sharp, A, and C sharp. There's the chord in root position. In the key of E, that's number 7. The type or quality, it's a diminished triad with a minor 7th. Half diminished, as expected in a major key. So we're going to say 7, half diminished. And then the bass note is the A, right? 4/3 position. So remember, the Roman numeral tells you what number it's built from, in this case 7, the quality or type of the chord, which is half diminished 7th chord. And then it also tells you that the 5th is the bass. The 4/3 tells you that, right? All right, chord 15. We have the notes G sharp, B, and E. We've had it several times already. You can see that's 1 with the 3rd in the bass. Chord 16, F sharp, A, D sharp, another A. Well, the root is D sharp. We just had that chord as well, but this time it does not have a 7th, right? It's D sharp, F sharp, and A. So it's 7. It's a diminished triad. And the 3rd, the F sharp, is the bass. D sharp, F sharp, A with the F sharp in the bass. And then E, B, E, G sharp is 1. B, B, E, G sharp. Well, in the root position, that's going to be E, G sharp, B. Notice it's 1/6/4. Now, which type of 6/4 chord is this? You should be suspicious that it is the cadential 6/4, since you're getting so close to the end of the excerpt, to the cadence, the end of the phrase, the cadence. And you can see that in the bass here we have scale degree 5. In the bass after it, scale degree 5, and a different note before. That's cadential. So we will bracket it, and you'll expect it to be going to 5 or 5/7. B, A, D sharp, F sharp. In root position, B, D sharp, F sharp, A. It actually is 5/7. Right, here's the root, here's the 3rd, here's the 5th, and here's the 7th. And the last chord, E, E, G sharp, B, and E, is a 1 chord with lots of doublings. All right, well, here's the finished analysis, the entire thing. And let's review again the 6/4 chords that we found. So remember, this was a passing 6/4. Look at the bass line. It goes G sharp, F sharp, and E. Passing 6/4 there. We put it in parentheses. And at the end, we found a cadential 6/4. Now remember, with the cadential 6/4, in the voice leading, you're going to have these upper parts come down by step. If it's just 5, it'll sound like that. If it's 5/7, they will all go down by step. And remember the bass line for the cadential, scale degree 5 on the 1/6/4, scale degree 5 after it on the 5, different note before. You might also remember the placement, strong, weaker, strong. Now, of course, beat 4 is not a strong beat, but notice in relationship, this is weaker than that. So stronger, weaker, strong. All right, go ahead and take one more listen, and in particular, pay attention for the 6/4 chord types that we learned about in this passage.